Hi, and welcome back to Thinking Kingdom Thoughts. I'm Tracy, and I just want to thank you for coming today. Today's show is about personal testimonies, and I would like for you to welcome my guest. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, Melyssa?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Melyssa. I guess just a real broad picture.
Yeah.
Born and raised in Oklahoma. Been here my whole life. I'm a nurse by profession, and I am engaged to a wonderful man, Zachary, who is over here in the room.
Yeah, he's an audience today.
That's
So
just
if you see her
real.
look over there with the gazing eyes and spooning,
Yeah.
that's what she's doing. It's sad.
Yes, yeah. So real broad picture.
Well, she does a lot for the community too, as far as like when we have our Sakots and things like that. I said that in another video that we did, but in case you don't see that one, know that she stays real busy during Sakot, changing band-aids, but also, getting people to emergency help when needed. So
Yeah.
she carries that burden for our group, and it's much appreciated. And of course, she's all the time praying for all of us during that time as well. And we're always praying for her because she's got a burden you're carrying.
Oh, thanks.
But thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we kind of went over this before about how long has your walk been with y'all?
Yes.
But maybe as a refresher, or did you have more to add to?
Sure. Well, I think back in the courtship video, I went like full and in depth, but we'll do in case someone doesn't watch that video.
Yeah.
I was dedicated, I think at like 6 weeks old. I have like a Pentecostal background, so I've always known that God is with me. My walk with God, I would say, has always been there. Whether or not I was walking with him
Right.
is another thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritties, but always grew up, knew that Jesus was my Messiah. I would say at about 12, I really kind of started backsliding, sinning, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I started a coven for witchcraft when I was 12. That was kind of the in vogue thing back then with movies, and whether it was Sabrina the Teenage Witch or really anything.
Yeah, Hocus Pocus.
Right,
Yeah.
Hocus Pocus, Sabrina Practical Magic.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. Witchcraft really was kind of the in vogue thing, unfortunately, and just heartbreakingly.
Yeah.
And so I kind of dabbled in that from a very young age. Kind of stopped with that. Again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but a praying mother can move mountains.
Yes.
And my mother always, I remember her walking in and me and my friends playing with like a Ouija board and doing a seance, and she's like,
Wow.
some choice words were said, but
Yeah.
that crap is not going to happen in my house. We're done.
Yeah.
And so whether it was those hard lines being made, I still, as weird as this may sound, and I know this is going to sound very, very odd, but the best way I can put it is lukewarm.
Yeah.
I absolutely 100% would have been spat out by God, 100%. Because while I would say my good night prayers, out of the same mouth, I was saying like spells and incantations,
Yeah.
like at another point in the day.
Wow.
And so I never didn't believe that Christ was not my savior, but the sin was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was steeped in it.
Yeah.
And then if you just continue on, I mean, whether it was like drinking at school or partying after school, or I mean, just various things of your youth that are just not ideal. I mean, I always had straight A's. I went to church on Sundays.
Right.
It's that truly of the world, not just in it mindset. Like you are of the world, and we're not called to be that. And then I can remember always having those times where God really pulled at me. I would say 13, 14, again, that praying mother, I kind of stepped out of that, and I really felt God kind of say, hey, come walk with me. Come walk with me.
Yeah.
And so I would for a few years, and then something would pop up. And then, I mean, yeah.
A person just kind of drifts away too. At least for me, it was a drifting. It
Yeah.
wasn't the, how I'm going all out now.
No.
It
Never.
was a drifting. And like you said, with the drinking at school, I put rum in a can of Coke and drank it on the way down on my senior trip.
Right.
We were the whole senior class, and no one thought that Tracy would have rum in her can of Coke, but I did.
I mean, I can remember freshman year, you were really nervous because you start hearing kids getting called to the office because so-and-so decided to throw up the screwdrivers you had before first period.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, people were getting named. And so then you were like, oh gosh, am I going to get named?
Right.
And it's like, what kind of life are you living?
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
Right.
Like, you shouldn't be worried about getting called to the principal's office.
Right.
And so, I kind of corrected my walk and started going to a church we have here called Life Church for a few years. Really loved that. And then just slowly ebbed away again. I'm going to say most likely because of college.
Yeah.
I started going to college. From there, so I am so thankful that this period of my life did not end in another way. But sorry if you see the flash on the video.
That's okay.
My cell phone has a flash to alert me. But I would say in college, it kind of got into that I am woman, hear me roar, feminism, liberal mindset. And then that's kind of where the lies kind of really started coming in of I have chosen my entire life, even through crazy like partying in high school and things like that, to maintain a physical purity. Mental purity is out the window, unfortunately, from a young age. But I maintained that physical purity, and I can remember in college those lies of the adversary kind of creeping in, like, well, you haven't really kissed a man. How do you know you're into men? You haven't really had sex with a man.
Really?
How do you know that you want to have sex with a man?
Really playing.
Oh, big time.
Wow.
And I can remember certain friends even saying those things. I called them friends at the time. And so then that's kind of where like a homosexuality thing crept in. And I never acted on it because I've still maintained that physical purity of no kissing and no sex and no groping even. But that would be the point in time, I would say, from the end of college to the first few years of nursing. I went on dates with women. I was on dating websites for lesbians, and it was like, well, I mean, if God doesn't have a man for me, then I'll find someone for me.
Okay, Sarah.
And it could be a woman. Who am I to say it's not?
Yeah.
And so again, the crazy thing is, even in those times, I was just so lukewarm. Even in those times, I never stopped praying.
Yeah.
Whether it was a prayer for someone, I was always taught that if you're driving and you see an ambulance, my mom was a nurse as well.
The same thing. Yeah.
If you see an ambulance, you don't know where they're going. You don't know who they're going to. You need to lift them up in prayer. Absolutely. So even those little things never stopped.
Yeah.
But then again, you think that if I had to hold an account for this, which I'm going to,
right?
If my life stopped at that moment, and then the next time I woke up was in line, like in the kingdom, I'm holding an account for that, and I'd be spit out. I would be weeping and gnashing of teeth for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And
then it's just so crazy because God will find you. He will find you.
Yeah.
It was 2016, and I went on a trip to Hawaii with one of my coworkers. He is a homosexual, and one of our other friends, to visit two other girls who used to work with us who were nurses who were nursing in Hawaii, who were married. They were wife and wife. And it was nothing to me. Just, I celebrated them. They were who they wanted to be. And I can remember coming home from that trip, and that's when I would say God really spoke to me. I can remember being like, you know, I think I'm gonna start going to church again, and I'm gonna really I really want to have a better life with God. Not necessarily change my lifestyle,
right?
But I really wanted to be closer with God.
Yeah.
And that, from the courtship video, is where I was watching American Ninja Warrior, and I was like, what is this? What is this Messianic Judaism? What is that?
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and I was like, that makes sense. And so from there, I started kind of changing some things. Yeah. And I would say I really started my walk with Yah, that rededication period in 2016, 2017, 2018. It was a slow burn, but at the same time it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I don't ever advocate for leaving situations and leaving friendships. I don't. I think we're called to be a light.
Yeah, we are, and we're to love everybody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We
don't.
But what's kind of crazy is when you choose to stop partaking in certain lifestyles, that certain lifestyle then becomes uncomfortable and stops kind of being around you. And I found that to be the case for me.
Absolutely.
Was
me
that
too.
Those coworkers that I would go out and party with and drink with, when all of a sudden I stopped partying and drinking, we didn't really have that much in common. When I stopped advocating for the homosexual lifestyle, and I wasn't hateful about it, I wasn't mean or spiteful or throwing phrases of sin in their face, if you will, but I let them know that wasn't my standpoint anymore.
Yeah.
We stopped having things in common, so I stopped kind of hanging out with them too.
Right.
And that's when I would say that my walk with Yah was really solidified, because then that friendship group changed, and I was introduced to Amber and Kim and Amanda, and I mean, those, I can remember the first time meeting all of them was at a Hanukkah conference, and it being, hey, are you doing Shabbat with anyone tonight? Do you want to Shabbat with us? And it was like, yeah, I don't know you from anyone, but I would love that.
Yeah.
And so that's my thing, is it's just completely different relationships when you're walking with God that end up getting cultivated.
Yeah.
And so, a long story short, I don't think I've ever stopped walking with God, or I don't think God's ever stopped walking with me. He's always been there, even in my deepest of sin. But I finally chose to grab his hand and walk with him.
Yeah.
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 That is beautiful.
Long story short.
No, that's what we need in these testimonies, is to be able to hear this, how it's stated.
I'm an open book. I do not believe anyone should ever sit in shame on their testimonies.
No.
Because as much as I could sit in shame about, pulling several girls into witchcraft at the age of 12, or dating a woman who identifies as a homosexual, I refuse to have shame about that, because I was delivered from those things because of God.
Right.
God delivered me of those things.
Yeah.
So that's not shame.
Right.
That I'm not going to take the glory from God.
No.
And not talk about how I've been delivered from those things.
Exactly.
And how those lies do not define me.
Yeah.
I refuse that. So
yeah. I mean, you'd be cheating God the glory, and I never thought about it like that before. That is so true.
Yeah, I never want to do that.
No.
But yeah.
I know none of us want to do anything like that to hurt him.
Yeah.
So, your kingdom thoughts. Earlier we talked about there's so many different ones that we can have.
Gosh, so many. So this will be my personal testimony one. We did a recent women's thing, and for me in this past year, thinking of kingdom thoughts in really difficult times for me has been overcoming fear. Fear has been a really big aspect in the past, I would say, 8-ish months of my life.
Right? Oh.
Yeah. So the verse that comes to mind for me is, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me.
Yeah.
And you could really stop it there. You really could just,
yeah.
how full that is. I know it goes on, but for me, that's where I'm going to sit and soak.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of reminds me of the apostles, like them being in the boat with Yeshua. They assumed that they wouldn't encounter the storm because he was in the boat with them.
Yeah.
No. You will always encounter. It's your faith in him that everything is going to be okay, that will save you.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
Whether or not once or twice or 3 times, who knows? That's
Right.
God's choice.
Yeah.
And so I have to believe that he is with me and not have fear.
Yeah.
And so, that for me would be my current personal testimony choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I want you guys to remember that Melyssa, who did the courtship, went through some pretty serious things over the past few months, and I asked you guys for prayer for that.
And thank you.
And would you like to go a little bit more into that today?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, I'm an open book. So I had COVID. I was really, really sick. I was in ICU for a few weeks, on a breathing machine, on a specialized bed that turns you over. The doctors really didn't have a lot of hope for me.
No, they didn't. It was not, what we were hearing was not, did not sound good.
No, I was on blood pressure medication to keep my blood pressure up at one point. So it was pretty intense. I personally don't really remember anything from the ER. So I went in on a Thursday. Was it a Thursday? Correct?
Do you want to come back in and sit with us?
I mean, it's up to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for this part, because you're gonna remember. You're gonna remember more. Know that most of this is anecdotal on my part, that I've been told.
Right.
So,
we'll reintroduce. This is Zach, her better half, or
My
her
fiancé.
other half. Or
yeah.
Hello again.
Yes. So I was diagnosed with COVID which your video is probably gonna be flagged. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
On the 4th of January of this year in 2022. I was pretty symptom free. I would say up until the 8th, because that's when we went to the ER, right? And more was the 8th.
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well, it was a Tuesday,
Something like
and
that.
then that Friday
Yeah.
is when you first went to the ER.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I was symptomatic. I was also
yes.
positive, and
Yeah.
at the same time, and I went
You had-
symptomatic
yeah.
early.
Yeah. You had.
I got all
basics.
the heavier stuff, which it wasn't terrible.
No, and
for
I
me,
can. Yeah.
But it was I got all the big stuff out of the way in the beginning.
For
so.
sure. And I can remember even telling my boss, like, I don't know why I'm off work.
Yeah.
Like, I really, can I just come in? I'll wear a mask.
Yeah.
Because we had a big regulatory body there kind of running us through the mill of, are your doors going to stay open or are they going to stay closed?
Right.
And I wasn't there for that. And so I was worried I wasn't there for that. And then that Friday came and I started getting really short of breath. And as a nurse, when you know. I think God did good.
Oh, yeah.
So anything with science, I'm going to always relate back to God, always. And you always you get that gut feeling, right? Well, your gut actually has neuroreceptors in it. So you really truly do have a second brain in your gut. And nurses get that gut feeling. You know when you know God did good. God did good.
Yeah.
And I just knew, I was like, this isn't great. But that's okay. I rebuke that. No, I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah.
So I go to the ER and it looks like the start of pneumonia, but it wasn't pneumonia yet, right?
Yeah.
So they gave me some steroids and sent me home. Then that Tuesday, I was really struggling. So I went to an access center. They did another x-ray. I have full-blown bilateral or both sides pneumonia at that point. And I decided to play doctor and put myself on supplemental oxygen at home.
And that was partly my fault too, because I'm like, hey, so-and-so may have some oxygen.
No, and I mean,
if
honestly,
we can get that to her, that would be,
that's wonderful.
you know.
Because at that point, we had stopped doing that. It was recommended in ERs to send patients home on oxygen.
Yeah.
At this point, they were saying if you were able to maintain your oxygen saturation for a certain period of time, even without oxygen, they weren't sending people home. So I think that allowed me to stay out of the hospital a little bit more, if you want to call it that, or technically get worse at home. Whichever way you want the cookie to crumble.
Right.
I say stay out of the hospital. That's just me.
Yeah.
And so from there, I then digressed in a 24-ish, 48-ish hour period. Called 911. I was really short of breath on noon on a Wednesday, right?
Yep.
And went to the ER. They took my oxygen off immediately when I got there. Wanted to see what my oxygen did without oxygen, my saturation. Did okay. And they were like, well, it's really up to you. We're super duper full. You're gonna stay in the hallway for a few hours, but
Who wants that?
no one wants that, girl. No,
No.
people be coughing.
Yeah.
That's no. And so I went home
Yeah.
and put myself on more oxygen. And I would say literally 24 hours later,
Yes.
like literally 24 hours later, I slowly went up, and I went up to about 4 or 5 liters on the oxygen at home. And I was like, that's when the fear set in.
Yeah.
Right there. Right
Yeah.
there is when the fear set in, when I hit 5. And my oxygen stayed in the
Yeah,
low
because
80s.
that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
We
And
kept it at 2 for my mom, and she was bad.
no,
5?
I was
Wow.
I was at 5
Staying
liters,
low 80s.
and my oxygen was what, 82, 80,
Yeah, it was something like that.
something like that.
Yeah,
80 or
it
82.
is.
It was pretty low.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm really struggling even going to the restroom. I need some help. So I call 911 again. At this point, I get took to my ER because I call.
Yeah.
Know that your nurse friends do have cheats in, okay? Just know that we do. So I call the medical director, or text him, and I was like, hey, I'm not doing great. Are we on divert, which means are we sending people to other hospitals?
Right.
He said, yes, we are, but tell them to come here, that you've been cleared to come. And
Okay.
I was like, okay. So I told the EMSA, I was like, listen, I'm in quality. They've told me to go ahead and divert the divert. They want me here in the hospital. And they said, okay. By the time I get to the
So
hospital.
keep in mind that she is a nurse,
Yes.
and she works at a hospital.
I have treated COVID from day 1.
She works in the ICU and then also the COVID department. So these are coworkers.
Yes. Yeah.
These
Yes.
are friends.
These are colleagues, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and he's saying, come on in.
Yeah,
and we'll
just
take
go
care
ahead.
of this. Yes.
Yes. And so EMSA couldn't get my oxygen up. The only place they could find a good oxygen reading was my big toe. And by the time I got to the ER, I was on, I think, 13 liters of oxygen on a mask, non-rebreather.
Uh-huh.
That's the most invasive mask you can do. Get into the ER. I'm still pretty fearful, but at this point, like thinking maybe it will be okay. Maybe it'll be okay. They put me on something called high flow nasal cannula, which, gosh, what was that? It was like 32 liters, 60% oxygen, something like that. 32 liters, 60%, and it blows.
Right.
It blows
It's forcing
into your face.
it.
It is
Yes.
forcing it into your lungs.
Yeah.
At that point, they try to give me a specific drug to open up my airway. I have an allergic reaction, and I start having shortness of breath and cannot breathe. I actually had pushback from the respiratory therapy department. We've never had someone allergic to this. They've never been allergic to this. And a part of me in quality, I'm just thinking, I wonder how many people have had allergic reactions to this medication who are already short of breath, who are already struggling.
Right.
And you guys chalk it up to the disease, not the drug.
Right.
Long story short, it didn't help anything to stop the drug, but it helped the allergic reaction.
Yeah.
So I stopped that, which is kind of unfortunate because that really does help open up the lungs.
Yeah.
That would have been such a phenomenal drug to utilize. At this point, I have a lung doctor come in who I work with. He's phenomenal. An infection preventionist who's treated my dad, who's had cancer for a while. He comes in. I sign a release form. That's why I still have that weird cough, FYI, sorry. I signed a release form for a what's it called? A trial drug for it's a chemotherapeutic drug for cancer that they were seeing good results on. There are 2 drugs that I did not consent to, but I did receive, so they are no longer.
So you've been able to go in your records.
We have open records, so I've read every physician note. I've read everything. That was really surreal.
That's really nice.
I kind of cried on that, but yes.
Yeah.
From the moment we went into the hospital to the moment I left rehab, I was able to read all those notes.
Wow.
It was insane, but I was on the basic cocktail, if you will, for COVID. And I was going to be what's called intermediate care, so that's step down from ICU. And then I think you went home for the night, correct? I sent you home, I believe. I remember telling you to go home because you came up to the hospital to be with me. Then something happened throughout the night. They had to go up on my oxygen, if I can remember the notes right. This is where my memory starts getting fuzzy.
Right.
They had to transfer me to ICU from the ER. I ended up being an ICU patient. Still on the high flow breathing. The only thing I personally remember from the ICU was that next few hours being in ICU. So I remember one of my coworkers being there, Alexis. She admitted me. And I got up to the restroom once. The toilets are in the room. There's no privacy in ICU. You just it is what it is.
Yeah.
I got up to the toilet once. I went and laid back down on my stomach because that's called prone positioning. And that's pretty much where my memory goes out.
Okay, so you had a lot of girls from church that came and stayed with you.
Yes.
And tried to do like a 24/7.
Correct. That was a blessing. When I say God moved, I mean God moved. So I wasn't intubated that next morning, correct? I had a whole day on the high flow, right? It was like that Sunday. So all of Saturday I was on high flow, right? Okay. I don't remember Saturday at all. Don't remember that. So then Sunday rolls around. I do remember saying, I'm not giving up. I'm just tired. That was a lie from hell. That was a bold-faced lie that I told my mom or you. I can't remember which one I told.
Both.
Okay. And I was ready to give up. When I say that I was at peace with dying, that I was okay. That's all right. It's my time to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
When I wake up, it'll be New Jerusalem. So I'm fine with that.
I know. Right?
Let's close my eyes. Let's go.
Yeah.
God had other plans. So I remember saying, I'm not giving up. I'm just tired. And then from there, I remember asking to be on a breathing machine. So I asked for the ventilator because it was so difficult.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that I was in fear. I think fear had left me at that point. And I think death was just with me. That was really surreal. That's kind of surreal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're facing it.
Yeah. And it's weird. I was not afraid, but it was almost just like nothing.
Was it a blessing to be a nurse and know? Or would you have been better off to have not known? And
He can attest to me, even in our engagement season. I like to prepare for everything.
yeah.
I like to prepare for the unknowns. So personally, I'm really glad I knew what was going on.
Okay. Well, that worked out for your
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Do I think that would be a benefit for most people? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't think it would be for me, at least. I
Yeah.
guard what goes
Sure.
in here. Yeah.
Absolutely. So at that point, they put the breathing machine on me and immediately to the specialty bed. I know that.
And explain this specialty
Yeah.
bed.
So
This
it's
is-
a great big halo. It's like a little circle, and your bed is in the middle of it. You lay on your back, and you get pads put where we call bony prominences. So like on your elbow, because you're paralyzed on this bed. They don't want you breathing on your own because
Yeah.
it's too much work. It's too much effort. So they paralyze you so that they can make however much volume of air goes in. So how deep your breath is, how many breaths you have, how hard you exhale, all of it. The force at which the air goes in.
Controls.
Wow.
It controls everything. So I get padded up and put on this bed and paralyzed and sedated. I'm majorly sedated, and it was for 9 days. And intubated for 9, on the bed for 7.
Yeah, I
Something
think
like
you were
that?
only on the bed for like 5 or 6, and then
Okay, yeah.
and
Okay.
then still on the tube. for
Yes,
another
a couple of
few
days. Yeah. So the only thing I remember from this moment
Mhm.
is a very real peace. Peace is the only thing I can describe this as. Whereas before it was the absence of everything where I felt death, this was peace. I felt like I was floating, and the walls and ceiling and floor, it was just me there. And the walls were kind of moving, almost like clouds rolling.
Yeah.
And behind them were like strobes of light, like when lights, like garland lights,
Yeah.
like slowly fade in and out of colors. That's what it was like.
Wow.
And all I can remember hearing were worship songs.
Wow.
At the time, they had brought a speaker from home
Yeah.
that was playing nothing but worship songs 24 hours on a loop on my
Right.
phone.
Right.
So when they ask if they think people can hear things, absolutely they can hear things. I think
That's good to know for a lot of people that,
Yeah.
you know, when they go through that, maybe they'll
Yes.
see this show and
I think Connie put it the best way, that I was in the presence of the Lord. I don't think a human can see the presence of God and live. Scripture tells us that, right? No man can see God and live. But I think I was in his presence, or under his wing at least, in those days. During this time, from what I was told, they told my mom I had about a 30 to 40% chance of living. My hands turned black. I started having blood pressure issues. They put me on blood pressure medication to keep it up.
it's just,
It was not good.
yeah.
So from there, we had the biggest blessings ever. I mean, the rules are like no visitors for COVID. You don't get
yeah.
visitors.
Yeah.
Because it was from the ICU I was in. I had some major mountains moved. From
Yes.
God's hand was in this from the very moment.
Yeah.
My mother and Zachary were allowed to be there, as well as the women from church.
Mhm.
I had several men come, and the elders, and blow a shofar over me. So they weren't even just allowed
This
to
is
be
in the
there.
ICU, folks.
In the ICU.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
were 6 of us in
Yeah.
there at a time.
It
At one
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Blowing the shofar.
Right.
And what did that represent? So that some people who don't fully understand that.
The shofar?
Yes.
So the shofar is a spiritual weapon, if you will.
Right.
The shofar is what was used to bring down the walls of Jericho. Via via the father, to instructing them what to do.
Right.
But yeah, shofar can definitely be used to break certain spiritual strongholds that the enemy has in place. So
Yeah.
This really has hit you hard, hasn't it, Zach?
Yeah. I mean, it was a tough time.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on in my world as far as balancing everything out, and because there's still other responsibilities. She's in the hospital, but we have 2 dogs, so it's like, well, they had to be cared for.
Right.
The house had to be taken care of. I still had to work.
Right. Yeah, they weren't giving you any allowance because
no,
you guys
I
aren't
actually,
married. So.
Right.
yeah, and I actually had a lot of because of my work required me to be off for 2 weeks with COVID, and I had to burn PTO. I actually lost money.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have enough PTO. We had just gone through a contract change.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a whole lot of PTO in the first place. I used all that up and lost money out of that pay period.
Yeah.
Just for the required time that I had to be off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to work and
Right
kind
away,
of,
as soon as you were cleared.
navigate that, and taking care of everything, and then going up to the hospital.
Yeah.
And
He was there every day.
Yes.
it was a lot. I
Yeah.
think I maybe missed 1 or 2 days.
Right, and I remember
Early on when you were
telling you to go and miss a day even.
Yeah, which I didn't. One of your nurse friends was actually like, "Hey, she's gonna be out, and she's out of commission.
Well, that's what.
She's on the bed. She's
Right.
sedated.
Yeah.
She's like, now's the time to miss."
But that's what we tell people, and
Right.
I know, and I get it. I totally get it. Being the nurse, telling someone if you're gonna take care of them, you have to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And people think it's kind of like a joke, but I mean, I don't know if you've been long term in hospitals with people.
Yeah.
It is physically draining.
Yeah.
And then on top of
so
that,
exhausting.
emotionally and mentally draining.
Yeah.
And when you have physical, emotional, mental draining, it is hard on you.
It is.
So
I was
hard.
in and out with my mom so
Yes.
many times. Oh,
So you get it.
yeah.
And so at this point in time, I'm on the breathing machine. I'm sedated. I'm paralyzed. I was on it for a while. The first memory I have coming out of this is them doing something called early ventilation mobilization. So that means the breathing tube is still in, and they get me up, stand me up, and sit me in a chair next to the bed so that I can have my lungs expand better in a chair, use my muscles, all of that.
Yeah.
That was worst case scenario for
Yeah,
me.
because did you lose a lot of muscle?
Very much. I lost about 20 pounds of muscle.
And in 5 days or 9 days?
No.
How many days were you at that point? Do you know?
They weighed me at day, I want to say 14. So in 14 days, I lost 20 pounds of muscle.
Is that not crazy? You
But
wouldn't think that.
I was getting IV nutrition, so they were giving me food through my IV,
Right.
which isn't great,
Yeah.
but it'll keep you alive.
Well, you're not
Yeah.
moving. You're not.
No,
You're not.
Right.
you
just-
start losing muscle in 12 hours.
We take for granted, even just
Twitching.
getting up, going to work, going to
Yeah.
just going to the grocery store, walking the aisles, those little things
Right.
keep you body in motion, right?
Yeah.
Body
So
motion stays in motion, yeah.
you're out of motion for 14 days, almost solid.
Yeah.
No twitching.
It
I
doesn't
wasn't, no
Nothing.
muscle, no skeletal muscle could move.
Wow.
Nothing. So,
yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't take long.
No.
No.
So and actually getting up, that's the first thing I remember is gagging and choking on the breathing tube. Because I couldn't breathe and I was moving, and I had something called activity intolerance because I had lost so much muscle. Literally getting up, physically getting up, made my heart rate jump into the 140s, 150s.
Wow.
My oxygen go down in the 70s and 80s. I had to be turned 100% when they moved me over.
Yeah.
For a while, even I went from ICU down to step down into something called IMC. Even therapy in IMC was really difficult because I had activity intolerance. So from intermediate care, I was there for about 2 days. And then I transitioned over to, God was on the move. They were going to move me to a medical surgical floor where they don't do a lot of physical therapy.
Yeah.
I most likely would have digressed.
Right.
Most likely.
Right, yeah.
One of my friends who runs what's called the cardiovascular care unit now manages that. And she said, I want you to come to my floor. We're going to get you up because they get heart patients up every day.
Yeah.
We're going to get you up. We're going to get you walking. We're going to get you moving. There's one caveat. And I said, okay, what is it? She said, you're not allowed to refuse anything.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I won't refuse it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have.
No.
That's just who
And
you
so
are.
I was there for 4 days. So from IMC to rehab was 4 days, right?
It's kind of a blur.
It felt like forever. It was
Oh, yeah.
that right there was when the spirit of depression set in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
I think it was 3 or 4 days. Because it was on like a Friday and I went on a Tuesday.
Prepped you pretty quick.
Yeah.
They were prepping her for rehab.
So my activity intolerance, I had to push past. When I got to CVCU, I would say even going from me to you, standing and sidestepping, caused my heart rate to go to the 150s. By the time I left CVCU, I was walking a 50-foot hall. That's 4 days. They were on me like nobody's business.
Oh, man.
So then from there, I go to rehab. And I was in rehab for about 2 weeks. And you do 4 hours of therapy every day.
See, now how would you have done that 4 hours if you hadn't have had that balance in between first?
It's impossible. I don't know how. There is where in between rehab and CVCU is really where the spirit of depression set in, and I do believe it's a principality. I've experienced it before in my life, this is where, oh, God bless her, Amber Thornborough got some crazy Marcos from me in the morning and at night, and I thank her, and so many women came. When I say the spirit of fear was deep entrenched. I thought I had the spirit of fear before.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of fear after was insane. Tracy, I could not be alone.
Yeah.
I was like, what if my oxygen stops? What if I stop breathing? What if I can't catch my breath from coughing? What if I have a mucus plug? What if ifs were going to make me lose my mind?
Yeah.
I had someone with me from church 24/7.
Yeah.
I had women come and sit with me from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, and they were there even when I slept. I can't thank these women enough.
I know. Thank you.
I mean, just the sheer amount of blessings, the things that these women would feed into me, and weren't ashamed to talk about their own fears and about their own struggles, and it not being about them, but it being about the sovereignty of God and improvement in their lives that they had. I can't even begin. I know that you shared conversations with some of these women, and just the amazing beauty of these conversations. Just hands down, some of the best times of my life during the worst times of my life.
Right.
So I went from there to rehab, was in rehab for about 2 weeks. And then I went home and was home for about a month. So from January 3rd to April 1st was my first day back, right?
Roughly, it was right around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think April Fool's might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
It was right around that time.
I think around April 1st was my first day back.
I'd have to go back and look at the calendar because, like I said, it was such a blur.
It really is.
God moved so much at home. I went home on 2 liters of oxygen, and then I'm pretty stubborn, so I would say by like week 1. So I went home on a Friday. I would say by that next Friday, I was sitting on the sofa with no oxygen.
Yeah.
Like, I refused to have oxygen on when I wasn't being active.
Yeah.
I didn't need it. I was
She
like,
weaned
it's fine.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
They're like, you're
yeah.
going to be on oxygen for months, and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll see.
God
about
is
that.
so good. Like, God is so good. I was off oxygen completely by the first 2 weeks during the day. At night, I still needed it for about that first month. By, I think, April 13th, I was completely off oxygen even when I slept, I think.
There was all those small miracles that
Oh
just
my
bundled
gosh.
together. Because here you were in this storm
Yeah,
of fear.
yeah,
And that was the one thing God needed to get you through.
right. So I really, truly, so I talked about walking with God, right? We talked about walking with Yah my entire life. Even in my sinning of sin, the darkest part of my story, I never didn't feel his presence. And I didn't feel his presence.
Wow.
I could not feel God's presence in the hospital. And I remember telling Amber, I was like, it's like he left me. But I have that head knowledge of he never leaves you. He never forsakes you. Never.
Yeah.
Never. And it's one thing to have the head knowledge, but when your spirit man is so oppressed, that I will never advocate for suicide, ever. But when I say I know that suicide is a spirit,
Yeah.
is a principality, I can say that 100%. Never did I want to kill myself, but being there and not feeling the very presence of God was so alarming and so, there's not even words.
Yeah.
There's not even words.
Right.
I
It really
see
is
how-
hard. It would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see how when people say there is no hope, how they feel that.
Yeah.
And so the crazy thing is when we went back to the house, I got home and I asked him to blow the shofar over me. I blew the shofar myself. I was like, I'm blowing this.
Yeah.
On oxygen or nothing, I'm blowing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I blew the shofar, he blew it over me. And the next morning, I am alone waiting for Emmy to come because she's the first up to take care of me. And I sat down and I listened for me to really feel the Spirit of God, minstrels, like musicians, really truly bring in, I really think there's something to the choir of angels.
Yes.
That really brings me and ushers me into the Spirit, and I felt his presence.
Oh.
It was the first time I had felt his presence in weeks.
Wow.
And it was like, man, how could I ever doubt this?
Yeah.
How could I ever doubt this? How? And it was miraculous. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
From there, I progressively got better. I went back to work and I got engaged to this wonderful man to my left.
Right.
Who was,
I just knew.
can I just say I can't even remember some of the conversations I had with you. I'm sure they're off the wall, but I can remember being in ICU delirium. Oh, bless him. He was sleeping in a recliner next to me in the bed in ICU because he decided to stay the night. They let people stay the night even in ICU. That's huge.
Yeah. Another miracle.
Another miracle. And I can remember looking over at him and being like, he's cheating. He is cheating and he's going to win this test on breathing tomorrow. How can I steal his breath? I've got to steal his breath. He's cheating. He's going to win this race. Dr. Devakonda, who's my lung doctor, he's going to give him an A+, and I got to figure this out. How am I going to steal his breath? I got to steal his breath. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I am in full-blown ICU delirium.
Yeah.
I remember thinking there were like pedals at the foot of my bed to race with, like in a race car.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, babe, wake up. Oh my gosh. And he's like, what? I was like, Zachary, this is very important. I am in ICU delirium. Full-blown delirium. You need to get my nurse right now. And he's like, what? Oh, okay, all
Which I'm
right.
like, I don't know what that is. But
I
all
mean,
right.
when I say full-on hallucinations, I mean full-on. And I can remember sitting in my bed thinking, like, when are they coming? I think I asked you that. I was like, when are they coming? And then I hear John, after I tell my sweet little baby nurse, baby nurse. I was like, I'm in full-blown delirium. I kind of told her a little bit of my hallucination. I was like, I need drugs for this.
Yeah,
Like,
because what is it they can do for that?
oh, several different benzodiazepines. And at this point, I was in delirium from not sleeping. I don't think I had slept in, 7 or 8 days?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that would
it
put
was,
you in delirium.
it was about a week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about a week.
Yeah.
And it's not for lack of trying. I tried, but I
Right.
just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I hear my old nurse friend, gosh, I've worked with him for 10 years, and he's like real gruff and just real old, just salt of the earth ICU nurse. And I hear him after she said, he's like, oh God, yeah, call the doctor, get her this, and this.
Yeah.
And so they got me those 3 meds, and it helped the delirium, but I think I only slept for an hour even on those?
Yeah, it wasn't much. They had to
Yeah.
progressively kind of mess with some.
And then I did
concoctions to
sleep.
get her
I
to
slept for a full
sleep.
24 hours. Yeah, a full 24 hours. I can remember laying in bed and the nurse being like, are you ready to turn? And I was like, and I just didn't even move for 24 hours. And then after that, I finally would sleep at night.
Yeah.
It was insane. But yeah, so that's my COVID in a nutshell. Fear and depression and death and God's glory over everything.
Yeah.
Just,
glory.
I mean, when there is power of life and death in the tongue, and I can remember you talking about the church coming together.
Yes.
And I was told that as well. I was told that the little things, even the little disagreements, the little things just stopped.
Yeah.
Because you came together in unity, in one,
Right.
to pray for me. I mean, who am I? And I can remember before I got sick, and I mean it now. Whoo! When I said it after I got sick, I remember the first time. But my thing with God was Hineni. And that means, here I am, use me.
Yeah.
And I can remember the fear, the literal fear of me about to say those words after I was sick. I remember I was praying and I just really felt his spirit, and I was ready to say Hineni, and fear caught it up in my throat. And I was like, no, I even if I went through all of this just for that moment, for people in church to truly feel what unity in the body is, what it feels
Amen.
like, what
Yes.
it looks like. Okay,
Yeah. Living it out.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I can remember telling Amanda Meyer, she was sitting next to me in the
She's so
ICU.
wonderful.
Gives the best foot rubs, I'll just tell you now. 100%. I can remember having just panic attacks, and she's just doing that good physical touch.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, it would have been easier if I died.
Mm.
And she's like, you're right. It would have.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not a lie.
Yeah. That's.
It would have. It'd be over. It'd be done. It would have been easier. But the hard work's where the reward's at.
Yeah.
She's like, that's where the reward in the kingdom's at.
She's so wise.
You're doing the hard work. She's like, you're in quality. You know that.
Yeah.
You know that the hard work is what gets the fruit.
Yep.
So you're right. It would have been easier. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you, no, it wouldn't have been. It would have. And I just think back to those conversations. And I remember sitting there in some of our conversations being like, this sucks. This is so hard. And it was like, it would have been easier if I died. And it was like, now, hindsight is always 20/20. I just think to those stories that you hear when people commit suicide, the phone call for the job came the day after.
Wow.
The letter from the family member saying that they forgive you came the day of. And it's just, that's why I think it's a spirit, a principality of evil, of depression, because it's like you have no hope. There is nothing better.
Right.
It's not going to come.
Right.
There is no more new mercies because the dawn is not coming.
Right.
And it's such a lie.
It is a lie, but it just doesn't seem that way at that time.
No,
It seems
doesn't.
like it's just very real. That's when you need people you can trust.
yes, I would not have been able to make it without
No.
the people in my life.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't have. Truly, I
No.
wouldn't have.
God is good to
God is so
surround
good.
us when we need that.
God is so good, and guess what? The morning does come, and His mercies are new every day,
Yeah.
and it is so good, and it is so great.
Yeah.
And I just think to the mountaintop that I'm on now, and I can remember talking to Amber about that, saying, I feel guilty because I'm hearing different things with people in their lives right now of their struggles, whether spiritual or financial or whatever it may be. And I'm over here with Zachary, and I'm on this mountaintop, and I'm getting married to the man that God had assigned for me,
Yeah.
and it's just so stinking great.
Now you're living the blessing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know what though? Don't take advantage of that. Don't feel guilty for that because there's going to be another valley. It may not be the shadow of death,
Yeah.
but there will be a valley. And this is the moment that I get to look back at. And I get to think, because now I get to look back at that shadow of death in that valley moment and think, my God, imagine if I had given up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get to experience this. I
Right.
wouldn't get to re-experience His Spirit and His beauty. And I think to the times that I'm praying now, and I do hear His voice, and I think to the times that we pray as a couple, and we do feel His Spirit and just His glory and His goodness.
Yes.
Like, man, it's so good.
Right.
But did I miss anything in that COVID story? Is there anything that gleams out that I shouldn't have
Well,
skipped
he's
over?
still got his testimony too.
Not
so.
that I recall.
Okay.
I think that pretty much.
All right.
I mean, whether vague
Yeah.
or specific, I think you touched
Yeah.
on all of it. So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Good.
I'll exit now. So you
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. So yes.
Well, Zach, thanks for stepping
Yeah.
back in again
Oh,
and
Yeah.
getting us through that. And
Yeah, I will say though that there are some crazy things that came out of that. I had a Hindu doctor who was like, this is a miracle.
yeah,
And for someone who literally still goes back to India every year to worship his gods, that's a big deal. For him to acknowledge a miracle,
yeah,
there's no way that's he could see people coming in and praying.
yeah.
That's huge.
It may have changed his faith.
I don't know. It may have.
Yeah,
I can remember getting cleared by him a month or two ago. I went for my last lung visit, and he was like, "Your lungs are healed.
oh,
If you get sick again, it's not going to be because of this."
nice. That's good to know.
So,
That is good
yeah.
to know.
I can tell you though that the spirit of fear is still very real in the healthcare profession for this disease. He was like, "Have you been vaccinated yet?" Another story for another time, but I'm not someone who does that.
Right.
And so I was like, "No, I don't intend to be.
No.
It's a faith thing."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Didn't push on it. Yeah.
Right.
So
Good. Good.
yeah.
Well, we didn't start this out with prayer, but can we close it out with prayer?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and it dawned on me, and I thought we need to at least close it out with prayer.
Yeah.
But I just really appreciate you sharing your testimony and where
Yes,
you're at. And
absolutely.
look how it all ended with this. Well, it's not ended yet,
No.
but
To be
she's really
continued.
getting the blessings. And
God is so good.
Yeah.
When I say that people are truly His hands and feet, when I say that I could see the Spirit of God in people at our church, yes,
yeah,
it was
the
such a
fasting
blessing.
and stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely amazing.
just a full blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people learned how to fast during that time.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
'Cause I was one of them.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. For
I was doing
anyone.
some intermittent fasting, but not like solid fasting
Yeah.
before. And so I got a blessing out of that too.
I love that. I love that.
Well, do you mind saying the prayer?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Our Father, our King, I just ask that if anything here today in my testimony was said for those who should not hear it in their moment or in their time right now in their walk with you, Father, I ask that you deafen their ears. But I ask, Father, that my testimony be edifying, not for me, but for you and your kingdom. I ask that people be able to see your glory and your goodness from every moment of my life. I ask that my testimony of you, not of me, but of you, don't stop here. I ask that I be able to continue and that others be able to continue speaking of your glory and your goodness, Father. I know in Psalms that you say that I am at your right hand and I will not be shaken, that my spirit is leaping with joy. Father, you truly are my joy, and I desire to be nowhere else but your right hand. I thank you for the forgiveness that you have given me for my life, and I thank you for the testing that you have allowed my spirit to endure, because I will take what the enemy meant for evil and turn it for good. I thank you for that, Abba. I ask that each and every person that encountered me, whether it be nurses and healthcare workers or family and friends, or fellow church members, God, I just ask that you bless them. I ask that you touch them, that your spirit just move, that your ruach just be as tangible for them as it was for me. I just thank you, Father, for your son Yeshua's sacrifice that has truly redeemed me from the sin that has been in my life, and the unknown sins even that I have committed or will commit, Father. I just thank you for his redeeming blood and his sacrifice. And I just want to give him all the power and the honor and the glory that he deserves as the Messiah and the King Most High, as God, Father. So I just thank you for everything that you have done with me and to me and through me. And I just, again, ask that you never stop, because Heneni, Abba, I just thank you. And I just ask that you bless Tracy and her family and her missions. I thank you, Abba. In Yeshua HaMashiach's holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So, in the meantime then, what we need to do is what I say every time: enjoy God's journey.
Yeah.